In this episode, we explore the distant origins of one of the most unusual Daleks to appear on TV. We explain how the Dalek creator Terry Nation came to own this and 3 other movie props. And we reveal their true genesis to discover they're not actually movie Daleks after all. Be sure to subscribe, because you won't want to miss our journey to Earth 2150 AD next week. 1973 was the 10th anniversary year for Doctor Who, and the series' most famous villains returned in the epic Planet of the Daleks. Written by their creator, Terry Nation, he included in his script a Dalek Supreme, coloured black and gold. A gold Dalek had appeared at the end of the previous serial, Frontier in Space. And as with the earlier Day of the Daleks, the prop used had simply been a regular one, repainted. But for Planet of the Daleks, an unfamiliar outsider was drafted in. Day of the Daleks had received some mild criticism for very obviously only having 3 Daleks in its invasion force, so a decision was made to increase the alien menace for Planet of the Daleks. An initial investigation into the use of vacuum forming produced a quote of £570 for 12 lightweight and potentially flimsy casings, but this idea was ultimately abandoned in favour of Cliff Cully's company, Westbury Design and Optical Limited, building 7 new Daleks mainly from timber for about the same cost. But to further increase their number, the idea was mooted to borrow one of Terry Nation's props, as he had 4 at his home. In a future episode, we'll reveal the surprising truth about how that sequence of events unfolded, and prove that many stories surrounding the Dalek Supreme's creation are not true, and the facts are far more interesting than the myth. But here we'll be turning our attention to his other Daleks as well. Since repainting of these casings can happen very quickly, it's important to look for more permanent identifiers than the colour. And thankfully every Dalek that's ever been built has some kind of unique feature. The easiest one to spot in this case is the long overhanging slat on the front of the gunbox. In November of 1973, the same 2 props appeared at Chelsea Town Hall Toy Fair, photographed by young James Russell. This picture shows unpainted red surfaces underneath, revealing a previous colour scheme, a clue to the history of this Dalek. In 1974, one of the most famous outings for Terry Nation's Daleks was the promotion of the stage play 7 Keys to Doomsday. And alongside the Dalek Supreme on the left, and the human Trevor Martin, we get a good look at the 3rd of Terry Nation's props. And amidst the array of weird modifications, it has one useful feature that has remained constant throughout its life. It has an extra 3rd rivet on the slat behind the gunbox, so we can keep an eye out for that in future. But this is not the story of how and why these casings changed in later years. This is the investigation to uncover their origins, so we must go back to the earliest footage we can find. An episode of the current affairs series Wicker's World, recorded in the autumn of 1967, had the snappy title A Handful of Horrors I Don't Like My Monsters to Have Oedipus Complexes, and it discussed the horror industry and why we like to be frightened. Terry Nation was interviewed at his mansion house, where Alan Wicker was introduced to not 3, but 4 Daleks. At first glance, these might seem like a completely different set of props, as there's no sign of the black casings or gold paint. But we know from James Russell's photograph that the Supreme Dalek had once been red, so we seem to be on the right lines. This clip also yields another fact. The Dalek in the background here has its gun on the wrong side, since Dalek guns are always meant to be on the left. Its manipulator arm, which should be on the right, must be either missing or very stumpy, otherwise it would appear in this shot. Sadly, this footage concentrates rather too heavily on the fleshy creatures in the foreground rather than the more interesting Daleks behind, so we can't deduce much more, but thankfully Terry Nation loaned or hired his props out, providing an array of source material to analyse. Starting in November of 1968, where Terry Nation's paperboy Steve Williams bagged himself the red Dalek for his local church roof fundraiser. But it was their surprise appearance in the young woman's magazine Honey 4 months after that provided some of the best quality photographs of the time. Not just those that appeared in the magazine, but also the pictures taken by onlookers, which show the deteriorating condition of the props. Here at the Kingsgate Festival in London, a key feature can be seen, with the long overhanging slat in front of the gunbox, singling this out as the future red-top Dalek. Curiously, it already has mismatched light covers, even though they're a different style to the mismatched ones later on. In August of 1971, the red Dalek showed up at Terry Nation's local village Fate in Linstead, and it remained in its Wickes World colours for at least another year, as it looked the same the following summer at Woolhampton Primary School. The Dalek alongside it was the same one that appeared in Honey magazine, and its distinguishing feature is a silvery sheen on the neck, where it looks like someone has attempted to wipe off some accidentally sprayed silver paint. Another feature, which is easier to see in the Honey photo shoot, is that the rails of the gun are pinched inwards in the middle. This photo shows that 5 years after the Wickes World footage, the gun is still on the wrong side, and it turns out this Dalek does indeed have a stumpy arm as we suspected. This left-handed Dalek actually holds several vital clues that begin to cast doubt on what we think we know about this quartet. Fans that care about such things generally accept that these are former movie Daleks. That is to say, they appeared alongside Peter Cushing in the feature film entitled Daleks - Invasion Earth 2150 AD, or sometimes Daleks Invasion Earth : 2150 AD, or Daleks ' Invasion Earth 2150 AD, or Daleks - Invasion Earth : 2150 AD. Anyway, now we've identified some clear distinguishing features for each of them, we can now look for them in the aforementioned movie, and from there uncover their true origin. For this production, a huge number of Dalek casings were assembled. By looking for unique identifiers on each one, it is possible to tell them apart. And for our frame of reference, we have numbered them all from 1 to 19, so we can try to attribute a number to each of Terry Nation's 4 Daleks. This collection falls into different categories. Firstly, there are 14 very good builds, which would be considered hero props. Then an additional 5 seem to have been built slightly more hastily, and are reserved mainly for stunt work. Some characteristics are easier to spot than others, and we'll begin with one of the more straightforward ones, which is that the solar slats on the shoulders are fixed in place with a pair of rivets that are usually quite close to the centre, as in these 3 examples. But on 2 of the Daleks, which we number 12 and 19, the rivets are spaced widely apart at the end of each slat. Prop 19 we may as well refer to by its colour, as it was the gold Dalek in the movie, whereas number 12 was a standard silver drone. At one time it was believed that the wide space rivets were unique, and that therefore this must be the same casing repainted gold later. But a side-by-side comparison shows that nothing else between these 2 Daleks matches. The distance between the slats and the collar is different on each one. The gap above the gun boxes is not the same. The screws which hold the collar on do not match, and the bolts are drilled in different positions on the skirt. So whatever happened to the silver Dalek with wide space rivets, it was not repainted gold. But all the aforementioned features of the gold Dalek do match perfectly to a prop seen in the Wickes World footage. So this is our first successful identification, and we can say that after the movie finished, the gold Dalek was repainted red and black, and eventually the top half would be repainted again and become the Supreme in Planet of the Daleks. The reason the bottom half did not is a scandalous story for a future video. The next identification can be made using that long overhanging slat in front of the gunbox, revealing this Dalek to have a future as the red top. And in the movie, we have numbered this prop 9. The third prop on our hit list features nicely in close-up, where you can easily see its 2 distinguishing features. The silvery sheen is visible on the neck, and here the stunt performer is bending the rails on the gun, as seen later. This is our prop number 11. And for our final identification, we come to this early scene at the top of the ramp of the Dalek saucer. Initially the prop in shot is a hero Dalek, number 7. But when the camera cuts away and cuts back, it has been substituted for one of the stunt Daleks. It has a rougher build with somewhat wonkier slats and a less polished dome. But the significant identifier for our purposes is that the first long slat behind the gunbox has 3 rivets. This is the prop we number 14. And it was later used in another stunt sequence when it struck by the van. The skirt is so badly damaged it could not be used again. Although Terry Nation does take the top of this Dalek, we have to look elsewhere for the skirt. The front panels of the Daleks all had hand-drilled holes, which are in slightly different positions, which makes it a relatively simple task to here identify skirt number 12, making up the last half of Terry Nation's set of Daleks. So now we can point to each of them in the movie. But what happened next? Shooting wrapped on the movie in March 1966, and it hit theatres 5 months later, but the Daleks weren't finished with, because a promotional partnership with the breakfast cereal Sugar Puffs continued into the new year and closed in February 1967, after which some props were given away. And although it was around 6 months after that the Wickers World interview took place, Terry Nation was not a competition winner. So how did he come by 4 Daleks? The clue to answering this comes from an unlikely place: the Daleks' manipulator arms. Daleks built for the movies, either the originals in 1965 or those built for the sequel, were all given either a traditional rubber plunger or this C-shaped claw. Movie Daleks also have slightly different guns to their TV counterparts, in that they are broader to accommodate their fire extinguisher weapons, and they lack the spokes of the TV versions. So although this is a promotional photograph for the movie, why does this Dalek not have a movie-style pincer, and why does it have a gun with spokes? These appendages hint that this Dalek comes from another source, but all the TV props were accounted for, and would never have been featured in a movie, so what other source of authentic-looking Daleks was there? The answer was to be found in Covent Garden, the Christmas before the movie went into production. Yes, that's
London 1965!
At the Wyndham Theatre, a production called Curse of the Daleks had been mounted, and it utilised 5 brand new props, supplied by the original Dalek makers, Shawcraft Models. Not only did they have TV-style guns, but they also had an array of unusual appendages, including that same weird pincer, which would be later seen in the movie. From there, we hunted for even more minute details which would tie the stage play to the movie. Sure enough, we discovered that one of the cursed Daleks had a dented hemisphere, and it could be found in the movie too. This cursed prop has a diagonal scratch on the back, and that can be found in the movie too. The Black Dalek in the play, which you might call the Supreme, has a misaligned neck section which doesn't sit straight with the symmetry of the body, and this exact same misalignment is seen on the Gold Dalek in the movie, which is also one of the few props to have a black eye stalk, as seen on the Black Cursed Dalek. So there are casings we can single out in the movie as potentially being the theatrical imposters, and we notice that all these movie props have a hole drilled in the rear panel. And when we check the publicity photos for the stage play, these same holes are all present in Curse of the Daleks. So the evidence seems to be conclusive that of the 19 Daleks that featured in the movie, 5 of them weren't brand new. They were hired from John Gale Productions. And the black casing that was the leader in the stage play was chosen to be the leader in the movie too, and repainted gold. The props in the play had been deliberately constructed to mimic the earliest versions of the Daleks on TV, in order to fit with the continuity of the Doctor Who universe, and that's why they were given the guns with the spokes. And by referring to David Whittaker's script for the play, we discover there are specific stage directions which indicate that the Daleks have a claw attachment, because they have to handle a cable in order to restore their power. Hence Shawcraft were instructed to provide working pincers for the live performances. And perhaps with the same devotion to continuity, they opted not to use the C-shaped design that had been used in the movie. It may be no coincidence that the curse claw is kept in the background of the shots in the movie. And the script of the play may also solve another long-standing mystery, as the pincers weren't the only conspicuous oddity being wielded. Seen here on the end of the Dalek arm is a sort of 2-part cup and saucer painted silver, which has no function in the film except to make Dalek spotters scratch their heads. But in Act 2, Scene 1 of the play, its script specifies that the Black Dalek has a torch, and Whittaker even clarifies that the operator must be able to switch it on and off from inside. In the story, the device is used as a kind of soldering iron, being switched on for the insertion of a power cable, and then switched off again once the connection is secured. In this behind-the-scenes photo from the movie, the strange attachment visible behind lead Dalek operator Robert Jewell seems to fit the bill. So Dalek Invasion of Earth hired not only the alien props casings, but also some of their quirky technology too. And when the shoot on the movie wrapped, the Daleks were returned to John Gale Productions in their modified form. But what use were they to a theatre company once the run had ended? The final piece of the jigsaw falls into place with this advert that appeared in The Stage on the 13th of October 1966, advertising the entire theatre production for sale, including the Daleks. This explains how the opportunity arose for someone to purchase a collection of movie Daleks, which weren't movie Daleks in their true sense, since they were built for the stage play. And that someone, it seems, was Terry Nation. The props were then at his disposal and available to the community at large for charity and publicity, becoming the most travelled Daleks of the 1960s and 70s. And this explains the gun with the spokes at St Nicholas School Fete, as it's the remains of the cursed Daleks still on display 5 years later. And when it was arranged for one to appear in Planet of the Daleks, it was fittingly the same casing that had, at least in part, portrayed the Gold Dalek in the movie, and before that, the Supreme Dalek in the stage play. When Terry Nation emigrated, he donated his surviving Daleks to a children's charity in Wales. And when it closed, one Dalek eventually came up for auction. After living in Blackpool for a while, it was purchased by collector Mick Hall, and its key identifier, as clear as ever, being the long overhanging slat on the gun box, singling it out as the red top from the 1973 Radio Times special. And the placement of the bolts on the front panels show that it's still paired with the same skirt that appeared in the movie, despite all the swapping and repainting in the years that followed. There's good reason to believe that more of Terry Nation's Daleks could still be out there, and we'd like to know more about their time with the children's charity. We received a tip that it might have been called the Sunshine Home. So could more Daleks be out there? If you have any more photos or other leads, please let us know in the comments, as we continue to try to solve the final mystery of Terry Nation's Special Daleks.